Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Welcome to our one of our monthly webinars about AI. We're very excited to continue sharing with you the knowledge that we are able to gather here and summon with our amazing list of speakers in order to give you and provide you as many tools as we can so that we incorporate into this AI new industry that needs us so much. So thanks for being here. I know most of you are still at work, and I know that all of you are very busy and demanded. So we appreciate very much you having registered and attending. Um, as you know, and as I said, this is a part of a series that we call it's called Riding the AI Wave. And this is a partnership with Capital One, who is an incredible sponsor and partner, and then with our sister organization called Conectado AI. And we're going to be joined by the founder and CEO of Conectado after our speaker. And we're going to be talking with you and creating a conversation based on your questions, your comments. Please feel free to leave all your thoughts or as many thoughts as you want to share and questions on the chat section, and we'll address them and we'll bring them up in our conversation for the second half hour of this webinar. So as you know, and for those of you that have been with us before, the goal of this initiative is to equip the Latino community and our friends, right? The friends of the Latino community with invaluable knowledge and skills to seize opportunities within the booming industry. This industry is projected to be worth billions, and we have to be part of it in order to grow it. Remember that Latinos are 25% of all the youth in this country, 19% of the total population, and 30% of all the new births. So if this industry doesn't include Latinos, they probably will be having a very costly and expensive blind spot for the industry. Just to recap, our last presenter, our last guest in the webinar a month ago was Dr. Gemma Galdón Clavel. And it was really fascinating because this is a woman that is an international speaker. She has all kinds of credentials on AI. She was part of the creation of the industry in Spain and then in the United States. And she talked about the importance and the need for ethical AI development, right? This is not only a tool to grow and to make money and to create better systems. It's also a tool and should be a tool that has ethical premises and that actually creates a better world. We loved her focus on enhancing human capabilities without replacing human roles, and the way she considered the environment, right? The impact of this technology in our quality of life, not only for us, but also for our kids. So that's why today's speaker is so exciting. Because, the subject, as you saw, is AI law and how to use AI without getting fired, sued, or arrested, which of course I hope it's very far away from anything that has to do with you. But what better than to learn the tools to avoid risks and to actually help to create that ethical industry that Gemma talked to us about last time. So with that, I'm very excited and very honored to introduce the special guest that you will be listening to and reading the information that he's bringing today. His name is Brent Britton, and he's a renowned corporate and intellectual property attorney with a rich background in representing technology companies and entrepreneurs. I know we have plenty of entrepreneurs within the audience today, and so this is important for you. Brent's job is to help and support people like you to use this tool without getting in trouble, without risks, avoiding risks, and knowing how to use it. With his extensive experience from the dot-com era to today's tech-driven landscape, Brent has worked with startups, international conglomerates, and a lot of different fields, including AI, digital media, software development, and cybersecurity. Brent earned his Juris Doctor from Boston University School of Law, a Master's of Science from the MIT Media Lab, and a Bachelor in Arts in Computer Science from the University of Maine. Please help me welcome Brent Britton.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Anna. That was delightful. I wish to say, lo siento, pero no hablo español. Yo aprendo español ahora, and mi vocabulario es muy limitado. So it's much better if I speak English. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and see if we can do this, and then we'll get that. Don't look at that. That was attorney-client privilege. And then we'll find this over here. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go to the slides. I have been, as was mentioned, I've been practicing law now for about 1 million years. Before that, I was a software engineer. I have enjoyed being an engineer for some time, and I wrote my first AI program way back, again, 1 million years ago in the late 1980s. And the concept of the thinking machine has fascinated me for my entire career. As mentioned, I was an engineer at MIT, and in about the late 80s, early 90s, the concept of software patents were beginning to be a thing, and ownership of intellectual property was something that people were starting to talk about. And at the time, you see, I didn't know a patent from a potato. I had no idea. I was a math nerd my whole life. And so I realized there was this whole body of information that I hadn't studied and didn't know anything about. So I decided to go to law school to help be the lawyer scientist, right? The lawyer engineer who could help bridge the gap between engineers and scientists on one side and business people and lawmakers and legislators and policymakers on the other side. And I've been practicing law now for 30 years. This year, I'm licensed to practice in California, New York, and Florida, which means nothing more than I've sat through 42 hours of bar exam. But my job and the practice that I run today has been to help entrepreneurs and business people advance their technology and entrepreneurial agendas. And so our services include everything from corporate formation and venture funding and founders agreements and stock issuances, as I say, investor deals, mergers and acquisitions. We help you sell your company, patents, copyrights, trademarks, all the things associated with intellectual property, as well as all the contracts, the licenses, and the terms of service and privacy policies, and all the documents you need to make your business run. As a former software engineer, I can tell you that a contract is exactly like a piece of software. It's just written in English, and we program people and companies when we write contracts. And so it's very much the same skill set. So here we are talking about intellectual property. I was talking about artificial intelligence, which is the thing of the day. I don't think there has ever been the advent of a new technology or a new thing in society that has had the hype curve that artificial intelligence has had. When ChatGPT launched publicly back in 2022, it gained its first 5 million users in something like a month. And it had its first 100 million users in like 6 months, which is unprecedented. It's just absolutely been an insane growth curve. Most people have heard of it by now. Most people are intrigued by it and have used it and are trying to figure out how it fits in their lives. And I'm here to give you some rules. We talk a lot about law. We talk about ethics. Your ethical guidelines in your life, from your heart, from your mind. These are things that must guide you in terms of the difference between right and wrong, and what you can do and what you should do, and what you shouldn't do. And whereas the law in my view, the law is really the outer bound on your behavior. You need to know the rules of the law, which present risks to your behavior, so that you can decide whether or not ethically you should be doing certain things and whether you're willing to take the risk. So let me just jump right in. I think it's important that don't assume that everything is okay. You may recall, if you were alive back then, in the 90s and 2000s, there was this new thing called Napster, because the web was only 3 or 4 years old and the internet was really only 10 or 20 years old at that point. And people finally realized, we can take our CDs and we can upload that music, we can give it away to other people and they can download it. And everyone was copying all their CDs, and everyone was kind of downloading the music for free. And there were a lot of lawsuits and there was a lot of problems, because everybody kind of assumed, well, hey, we've got the World Wide Web now. It's the Wild Wild West. Turns out WWW stands for Wild Wild West, and we can just get away with anything, because clearly those fat cat legislators back in Washington, they know what's going on this technology. None of the existing law there in the books applies to this new technology, and so we'll just get away with everything, and we'll start a whole new thing. It'll be a little utopia and everything. Similar arguments have been laid down by the Bitcoin people and the folks who are promulgating the new cryptocurrency and all that sort of thing. And there's this assumption that, for some reason, there's this assumption that, well, we got this new technology and it changes everything, therefore there's no law. There's no law, there's no ethics, there's no rules that apply to this. And that is wrong, okay? That is incorrect. There are a lot of laws, and they're perfectly capable of embracing new technology. And so it's entirely without the bounds of possibility that what you're doing with the AI is not going to be governed by some kind of law somewhere that's got something going on that matters. So I'm here to tell you about some of the things that exist that should modulate your behavior when it comes to the AI. So don't innocently assume everything is okay. This is not the Wild Wild West. There's plenty of laws that apply to what we're doing here. As fancy and new and interesting as the AI is, there's still a lot of rules, okay? And so we're going to go over those today. I hope you can see my screen pretty good. I'm trying to, I see a bit of it's kind of in the way, but I'm not sure what you're seeing. But anyway, here's the AI legal landscape. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you very much. Here's the AI legal landscape today, which is, yeah, it's like this. It's a bit convoluted, actually. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of things that you do need to worry about. The title of the talk is how to use AI without getting fired, sued, or arrested. Really, the point is just to know where the rules are, so you can decide whether you want to approach them and how much risk you want to take, right? Whether you're using the AI in your job or in your home, or for whatever purpose, okay? So here's the thing. First thing you need to know, basic intellectual property law, copyright infringement, okay? Copyright is the law in the United States and most of the world, I must say. It's one of the few areas where the law is actually harmonized almost universally. Copyright are the rules that govern how we own things that we would call content, audiovisual works, literary works, written words, books, articles, magazines, photographs, videos, sculpture, dance choreography, okay? Copyright is I hope I'm not freezing. Copyright is the body of law that governs how we own content and artistic works. So you commit a copyright infringement if you copy a copyrighted work, okay? If you take a photograph and you make a digital copy, then you are committing a copyright infringement. You're not allowed to copy other people's works because they own them and you don't. And that's one of the things they have the exclusive right to do, is make copies, and you don't. Excuse me. So if you make a copy of a copyrighted work, you have infringed that copyright, all right? You also commit a copyright infringement if you have access to a copyrighted work and then you produce a substantially similar work. So suppose I'm in the library and I pick out a book, and let's say it's Romeo and Juliet, and I read that book. I've had access to it, you see, and I put that book back, and I'm all delighted because it's a wonderful story, very sad at the end, of course. And then I go and I write, I go and I write my own book, and it's West Side Story, let's say. West Side Story is very similar to Romeo and Juliet. The question is it substantially similar? And if a court were have decided that West Side Story was substantially similar to Romeo and Juliet, well, then Shakespeare, were he alive today, could have sued me for copyright infringement because I didn't copy his book, but I had access to it, and then I wrote a substantially similar work. So you can see those are the two ways that you can potentially commit copyright infringement. You look at something, then you go copy it just in your head, and you make something that looks like it. That's potentially a copyright infringement. All right. So here's an example of what might be a potential copyright infringement. The photograph on the left was taken by an Associated Press photographer back in 10, 15 years ago. Apparently, the gentleman on the left is one senator from Illinois at the time. I believe his name was Barack Obama. He was taking this photograph by the AP photographer. And then this artist named Shepard Fairey came along and took the AP photograph and created the well-known Hope poster, which was instrumental in getting President Obama elected. And he was sued. Shepard Fairey was sued by the Associated Press for copyright infringement. And Shepard Fairey claimed a defense known as fair use, which is, it's okay. I may have copied the photo, but I changed it enough, and it's really, it's not a substitute for the photograph in the marketplace and all these things. So they sued him nonetheless, and the case settled out of court, and so we don't really know what the result was. But I show this to give you an example of what the difficult issues are in the copyright infringement space, because, this photograph has a certain artistic value, and it was clearly copied by the artist to create the Hope poster. The question is, should that artist be liable? Is this a copyright infringement? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you, do you think that the artist Shepard Fairey should have paid the Associated Press some amount of money in damages for this infringement? And the question, here's the point here really, is it almost doesn't matter what we think as we sit here. What matters is that we can't predict the outcome, because the outcome of this case would have been, had it not settled out of court, would have been dependent on the opinion of 12 good persons and true sitting on the jury. And we don't know how they're going to respond in any instance of copyright infringement. Maybe this was an infringement, maybe it wasn't. Maybe if they lost, they would have won on appeal. We don't know. And that's really the essential point I want to make here. I can tell you what the rules are all day, but at some point the rules get litigated. Okay, and every case turns on its facts, which just lends another layer of risk and uncertainty into the entire equation. So keep that in mind. Remember, let's not forget we started with this, right? So let's just we're just feeding that machine. Okay, so we're getting to the point now where we want to be clear, where we say you commit a copyright infringement if you copy a copyrighted work. You also commit a copyright infringement if you have access to a copyrighted work and then you produce a substantially similar work. So here's the thing. Because the AI either made copies or had access to literally everything, it is possible that everything generated by the AI is infringing someone else's copyright. Let me take a moment just to observe that when I refer to the AI, I just mean all of them. I mean ChatGPT, I mean Claude, I mean Stable Diffusion. Okay, they're all pretty much the same. They're all large language models operating on a general purpose transformer, and so I'm not calling to task any of them in particular. The point here is that if you're using an AI, that I was trained on some input data. It was trained on some stuff that taught the AI how to be. It's where the AI gets its I don't want to say knowledge, because the AI really doesn't know much. Okay, here's the thing about what the AI knows. When the AI has been around, as I said, I wrote my first AI program back in the 80s, and AI was an old thing even back then. Okay, when the AI first beat the international grandmaster at chess, we said, well, that's not artificial intelligence. That's not even intelligence. That's just raw computing power. And then the AI beat the international grandmaster at a game called Go, and we all said, "What the heck is Go?" And then they said, "Oh, it's a really, really skillful game, and it's just a miraculous that the AI could have beaten the champion." But we also said that's just raw computing power. It's not intelligence. And then the AI beat the champion on Jeopardy. And we watched that and we said, well, still, it's just fast searching capability. That's all that is. And then it was not until 2022 when ChatGPT started talking to us like a human that we said, okay, that seems to be pretty intelligent. But it's important to remember that it's not. The AI that we have access to today, the rank and file, you and me and everyone else, is not intelligent. It's not smart. It's not thinking. It's just doing a sort of autocomplete on steroids. All right. It's just doing impressive search functionality that allows it to generally predict what should come next. Okay. And it's much like the search function on your iPhone as you're typing. It occasionally predicts what you might want to say next. So that's really just a simple version of what the AI is doing. In order to get to where it is today, in order to learn how to do that, it had to ingest a lot of information. It had to ingest a lot of knowledge, a lot of text, a lot of pictures, a lot of things. So it either made copies of those things or it had access to those things. And when it spits output out, if that output is substantially similar to what went in, there's a really good chance, in fact, that whatever comes out of the AI is infringing the copyright of everything that was used to train the AI. All right. And there are a lot of cases. All right. This is a case, this was filed way back in 2022, shortly before, in fact, ChatGPT was launched, because ChatGPT copied all of the software from GitHub. In order to train itself on how to write software. And if you're using Microsoft Copilot or any of the other tools that will fill in your source code as you're writing software, it learned all that by copying other people's source code. And they're upset about that and they're suing. I don't know if you've ever been involved in a litigation, but it's just a really efficient lickety-split process where you file your case in the morning and you have a result in the afternoon, and everybody knows what the rules is after that. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Litigation takes years, months, weeks, years, and puppies turn into dogs before your case is even remotely getting started. So we don't know what the result is. But here's the point. Again, these cases make the law and these cases make the rules. So we need to wait for these cases to be decided to see how judges are going to interpret some of the things, including what I just said to you, which is it true that ingesting data into the AI is an access? Is it a copy? Is it substantially so? We don't know yet. We don't know what these judges and juries are going to say. So we have to wait for these cases to be decided to figure out what's going on here. Here's another one. This is Sarah Silverman case. You may have heard of her, the comedienne, a bit avant-garde. She wrote a book. And if you go to OpenAI or ChatGPT and you ask it to summarize Sarah Silverman's book, it will give you a summary of the book. And she sued for copyright infringement based on the fact that in order to have generated the summary of the book, the AI would have had to have copied the book, and that's copyright infringement. I don't know that this case is particularly strong, to be honest. Because summarizing books is what reviews do and editors do and reviewers do and all the thing. And so it shouldn't be, in my view, shouldn't be a copyright infringement just to summarize a book, unless, of course, the summary begins to serve as a replacement for the book in the marketplace, because let's face it all comes down eventually to capitalism. So we don't know how this case is gonna go either. Here's another case. This one's really interesting. This is Getty Images. If you're not familiar, Getty Images is a photo site. You can go there and you can license photographs and use them for various purposes. And they have a large library of photographs. And Stability AI trained its AI on the Getty Images website, and they're suing for they copied more than 12 million photographs. And Getty Images is suing Stability AI for in excess of $1 trillion, because copyright damages can get excessive in certain circumstances, and I won't go into, but it's a big case. And, it's like, so if you copied all my photographs and then you start producing new photographs, on what basis can anyone decide that there's a copyright infringement? Is this another, Barack Obama case with the AP and the Shepard Fairey Hope poster? Well, here's an example of some of the output of the Stability AI case against Getty Images case against Stability AI. On the photograph on the left is, of course, an actual photograph from Getty Images. It's got the whole Getty Images watermark right there in the middle. The photograph on the right was produced by Stable Diffusion, and it's a little wonky, of course. It's got weird body parts, and it hasn't properly been structured, and it's actually kind of horrific when you think about it. But boy, it is certainly very similar to that photograph on the left. And of course, to add insult to injury, it's got a version of the Getty Images watermark replicated right there in the AI output. So, you know, again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I think we can agree that it's not looking too good for the folks at the Stability there in their case in defending themselves against the Getty Images, because these may be poor copies and they might not be replacements in the marketplace, but boy, they're substantially similar. I think we would all agree. So that's happening, and so I think it's important to recognize that if you are taking output from the AI and you're using it in some meaningful way, if you're just using it for your own personal purposes, then nobody's going to know or care, and you're never going to get in trouble, okay? But if you're doing it at work and you're pulling output out of the AI, you're putting it in your publications, you're putting it on your website, you're putting it in your blog, you're putting it in your market materials, your shareholder reports, okay? I don't care if it's a photograph or a paragraph or column inches of text or whatever it might be. You need to understand that there is a risk that that content is infringing the copyright of the input to the AI that the AI was trained on, perhaps even years ago. You are not permitted to go out on the internet, grab stuff that you don't own, copy it, and put it on your blog or put it on your newsletter or put it on your website. That's a copyright infringement. If you do that to the wrong person, you will hear from their lawyer. Well, same thing is true with the AI, okay? Is if you go out and use the AI and it produces something for you, well, gosh, there's a really good chance that may be, that may be a copyright infringement. That may look like this photograph on the right and is going to get you in trouble. I guess, one of the questions that comes up here, of course, is, well, is that my fault or is that the AI's fault, right? Is that who should be sued here? Should it be me, or should it be OpenAI or Stable Diffusion or whoever else produced the AI? And the answer is, we don't know, but you're a pretty good plaintiff. You're a pretty good defendant, as far as I can tell. Yeah, sure, I might want to sue OpenAI. I might want to sue Microsoft. I might want to sue a Stable Diffusion, but you're the one that published the thing. So you seem like a pretty easy target right there from the get-go. So you see, you got to be careful, okay? You got to be careful. What you pull out of the AI could get you in trouble. All right, here's a nifty twist on this whole concept of ownership. I'm sure everybody recognizes this fine-looking fellow. See, what happened was a nature photographer was out there in the jungle, see? And he was taking all the pictures of the things in the jungle, and then he set his camera down like you do, I don't know, nature's call or something. And while he was away, this fella came along, this monkey came along, this ape came along, picked up the camera and took a selfie. Okay, this is a selfie that the monkey took of himself with the camera. And then the photographer gets back and he looks at his camera and he sees the photograph there, right? So he goes, when he's back from the jungle, and he goes to register all his photographs at the Copyright Office at the Library of Congress, the United States Copyright Office. And the United States Copyright Office said, no es bueno, señor. No copyright for you on the selfie taken by the monkey, because only humans can be authors, okay? Now, there is an exception to this, which I won't spend a lot of time on, but in certain circumstances, companies can be authors in the way that humans are authors, but we're not going to worry about that for the purposes of this talk. The point is, if you create something, and you have to be a human, or you can't get a copyright in it, because, as I say, copyright is how we own this stuff, okay? And the rules of copyright are that only humans can be authors. So if your cat gets paint on his or her paws and then walks across the canvas, and you think, oh, that's a beautiful work of art, I'll register the copyright. No es bueno, can't register the copyright because the cat is not a human, as much as you may want to humanize it. And so the same is true with the AI, okay? To be absolutely clear, the raw output of any AI is not ownable. And until a human adds some measure of creativity, it is in the public domain, okay? So everything that comes out of the AI, because it was not authored by a human being, because the AI is not a human being, to be absolutely clear, is in the public domain. Everything that comes out of the AI is not ownable. It's not owned by you. It's not owned by OpenAI or the company that created the AI. It's not owned by anybody because, again, copyright is how we own things in the United States. And copyright says that you can't be an author unless you are a human. Therefore, everything that comes out of the AI is not ownable. So let's get to the bottom line. You can be potentially sued for everything you publish that was created by an AI, right? We established that as our first point. I say publish because that's how they find you, right? If you never publish anything, then they're never going to sue you because they never know you did it. So that's why I say publish. But you don't own it yourself, and everyone else can copy it from you. So double-edged sword, two-sided coin. However, pick your metaphor. Okay, you get the stuff out of the AI, you publish it, you can get sued because it copies somebody else's stuff, but you don't own it and everybody else can copy it too. Now, they'll get sued too, potentially. Okay, that doesn't insulate anybody else from lawsuits. So it's really important. So the point is, if you get something out of the AI, you gotta edit it, you gotta review it, you gotta add your own creativity. Once you add enough human creativity, then you become the author for copyright purposes. And you can register a copyright on that. Okay, now you still may have the copyright infringement concern, which is that you still may be substantially similar to something that went in to train the AI. All right, but you can generally get over the ownership concern by simply editing the AI yourself. Now, I don't know about you, but I've used the AI to do a lot of stuff. I occasionally have it draft the initial draft of a letter or an email. Occasional outline, that sort of thing. It's not at the point where it can write a meaningful legal agreement at this point. It's very simplistic and it doesn't really know any of the subtleties that I, as a lawyer who's been practicing for 30 years, know. I think that'll change in about 5 minutes. And I think, frankly, lawyers like me are going to be out of a job at some point in the not too distant future because it will learn how to do what I do pretty fast. But my point is, when I get something out of the AI, I consider it a first draft. I consider it a rough draft drafted by a first-year lawyer, a first-year associate, or my kids or something, right? Like it's a very rough draft, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to edit it and I'm going to make a lot of changes. I'm going to enter my own creativity, and eventually it's going to become mine. Again, we have no idea where that line is. We have no idea where that line is. Okay, it could be changing every other word. It could be changing a few paragraphs. What makes a work turn from something that was authored by a non-human AI into something that was authored by me? Is it 20%, 30, 80%? Nobody knows. There's no bright line. And so you have to be careful. Okay, you can't just pretend that everything is okay. You need to change things substantially enough to make it your own. And you may ask yourself, how's anybody going to know? And the answer is, if it matters enough, if suing money is at stake, okay, if somebody's going to sue you over something because they think there's millions of dollars at stake, there will be discovery. There will be evidence. Somebody will do an audit on your computer. They will figure out what you did, okay? So there's no, that's when it matters, it'll matter, all right? So OMG, thirdly, yes, OMG, seriously. You don't own it because the AI is not a human, but you can get sued for it if you're not careful, okay? So there are lots of other lawsuits. There are people suing the AI. And again, all these lawsuits end up resulting in some kind of rule. Okay, some kind of rule. That's where the law comes from. The legislators make the law, but then the judges and the courts interpret the law and they make their own interpretations of the law, and that becomes the rule. So every lawsuit that's decided makes some effect on the rules that govern you and me and our behavior. Okay, so there's people suing the AI for libel and slander and hallucinations, and privacy disputes, and literally, generally, to prevent the downfall of civilization because they're afraid that the AI is going to wake up and find itself conscious, and we're going to have, the Terminator situation going on. I think we're a bit of a ways from that, frankly, but there are lawsuits. So here's the point. I told you that my job here is to protect you from risk. My job here is to prevent you from taking a lot of risk. I apologize for this picture. It's a bit grotesque, I admit. I live in Florida, and we have this wonderful place here in Florida called the Everglades. And what happened? The Everglades is populated largely by the Florida gator, by the alligator, and they grow to immense proportions down there, and they're pretty interesting, of course. And then what happened was, apparently some people found that these Burmese pythons were really cute as pets, and so they bought a Burmese python, and they really enjoyed its company until it got big enough to eat the dog, and then they said, "Wow, this 12-foot Burmese python does not belong in our home. Let us go dump it in the Everglades." And so the Everglades has this invasive species of Burmese pythons that come in, and they're taking over. And it's so this photo, it's an actual photograph. This is not AI. What we think happened here was one of the gator met one of those Burmese pythons, and the python choked out the gator and swallowed him. And then the gator woke up and said, "Ha, I'm not dead," and then chewed his way out. And then they exploded and they both drowned. And I submit to you that this is what litigation feels like. Okay, because when these fellas met each other, I suspect both of them thought they had a pretty good case, and now they're both dead. And you don't want to go through litigation. Okay, if you're starting a company, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a big company, you want to avoid as much litigation as possible, because I'll tell you, there's nothing that's a bigger waste of money and time and energy and spirit and love and all the things you should be paying attention to in the world than having to deal with a court case. Because if you're material to the outcome of that case, you're going to sit on the witness stand. You're going to hear things that you've said and emailed and said to other people, turned and twisted in the worst possible light. And it's just a miserable experience. And so again, the whole point of all of this is for you to make the right choices and do the things that will prevent you from drowning in the Everglades of litigation. All right, here's something that's really important to understand. Your AI prompts are probably not confidential. So when you type something into the AI to ask it a question like, "Hey, give me a 4-stanza poem about the sunset in the Everglades," that's called a prompt, and prompts can get very elaborate. You can drop a whole document into a prompt and say, "Read this document and draft one similar to it, but change it here, there, and there. Read this letter and make it more professional and less casual," things like that. And it's really good at doing that. The problem is, you see that it's very possible that everything you put into the prompt is no longer kept confidential. Okay. So you got to be very careful that you don't prompt the AI with confidential information or trade secrets, or, if you're a lawyer like myself, client information that you are beholden to keep secret, whether by the attorney-client privilege or a non-disclosure agreement or any other reason. So the way to get over this issue is to go ahead and review the terms of service. Okay. Each of the AIs that you might use has a contract associated with it that is binding upon you. That is the terms of service. And it generally says that, by using this service, you agree to these terms. You can generally find the link to the terms of service somewhere on the page, or just Google it. Some of the terms of service, especially for the free versions of the AIs, will say, "We may use your input data to help train our AI or regulate the service." That right there should tell you that they're not keeping your input confidential. Okay, there's no obligation in many of the terms of service to keep your prompts confidential, which may be no big deal, because what is OpenAI going to do with a prompt about Aunt Tilly or my client Joe Smith, who's starting a company? They don't care about any of this, right? Well, there's a technicality in trade secret law, which is really important for you to understand. You can only maintain secrecy of things that are actually secret. And if you tell somebody the secret without any obligation for them to keep it secret, then it is by definition no longer a secret. Okay. Secrets are this sort of binary thing. Either it's secret and everybody who knows it is legally obligated to keep it a secret, or it's not. And if there's one person out there in the world who knows this thing with no obligation to keep it secret, it is no longer protectable as a trade secret. So if you dump your secret information and your confidential information and your client information into the prompt of the AI, you are potentially destroying trade secrecy or any protection for that confidential information forever. Okay, so you need to be very careful. If you're going to put stuff in your prompt, make sure that it's anonymized. Make sure that you change all references to Aunt Tilly or Joe Smith to, something else, $, or what have you. More to the point, the contract that governs your use of the AI is a meaningful binding contract. And I know, I get it. I know we all click "I agree" on contracts all day long without reading them. I write these things for a living and I do it myself. Okay, I get it. But the point is, they are binding unless they're stupid, right? Unless they try to do something stupid, unless they're unconscionable, a court will enforce them against you. So they mean important things to your life. If you're going to make significant use of the AI in your job or in your life, I encourage you to get me or someone like me who understands these things to read that terms of service for you and tell you how it's going to affect you. Okay, because it's non-trivial, and it's legal, and it's technical, and you can't hand wave around it. All right, very first slide. Don't assume things are okay. You have to read these words, and you have to understand how they affect your life. This is the OpenAI version of the OpenAI terms of service. I'm not going to linger on that. Look, one thing to be very aware of as we approach the end of my time are the legal risks associated with hallucinations. If the AI really wants to please you, okay, it wants to give you an answer. If you prompt it and say, "Hey, tell me about this thing. Write me a memo with XYZ," it will very much try to do that for you. The trouble is, every now and then it will make things up. It doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction in all cases, and it's not terribly good at maintaining the truth, because again, it wants to complete the whole concept of the GPT, the general transformer, is to complete the sentence, complete the concept, and do that based on everything it has learned thus far. And so even if it doesn't have information, it will sometimes make stuff up. And so there was a case, of course, this lawyer it wrote a brief, asked ChatGPT to write the brief and on a particular subject, and ChatGPT wrote the brief, and it made up all the case citations. It said, yes, well, in the case of Smith versus Jones, you see, it was decided that the WYSIWYG should be the pentagonal, and they submitted that brief to the judge, and the judge said, I can't find any of these cases. What the heck's going on here? And it turned out that ChatGPT had made up, had hallucinated, had invented, had lied, if you will, about all the cases in the brief. And so this lawyer was fined a $5,000. So you don't want to be that guy, right? If you're doing something, especially something that's mission critical, especially something that's got the whole bet the farm or something, for God's sakes, proofread, right? You've got to go through. You cannot rely on the output of the AI to be factual, truthful, correct. It tells lies. It makes up stories. It doesn't run rampant. Okay. 90% of the time it's actually pretty good, but every now and then, and trust me, Murphy's Law, every now and then will be the one time you don't want it to be. Okay. You don't want to have to go. You don't want to have to go through this. So you got to proofread everything that comes out of the AI. Again, have an AI policy in your company. You have a social media policy, probably you have an internet policy, an iPhone policy, mobile phone policy about how people can use these tools. Have someone draft a meaningful AI policy about how your people in your company can and should be using AI in furtherance of your business, so that they know what the rules are, and frankly, they can get in trouble if they don't follow them. And proofreading, of course, should be among them. So a lot of people come to me and say, "Can I just use ChatGPT to write this contract? Why do I have to pay you $750 an hour?" And I say, well, because first of all, ChatGPT is a little kid who tells lies. And do you really want your legally binding policies and agreements to be prepared by a hungry, spy-trained toddler? Because that's kind of what the AI is. Don't you know? So I'm not saying this to suggest that lawyers are going to have jobs forever, because we're not. But right now we're better, and most professionals are going to be better than the AI at most things right now. But again, it won't be long before civilization is going to have to change to adapt to a situation where knowledge is no longer a bottleneck to professionalism, where knowledge and privileged access to knowledge is no longer a bottleneck to success, because the AI is going to outthink all of us. Here's another one. Does your policy cover AI mistakes? A year ago, when I was presenting on this subject, I was informed by my contacts in the insurance industry that they didn't know from the AI. And if you have a general liability policy, errors and omissions policy, that if you're using the AI in your business and it messes up and you mess up and you get sued, that would be covered under your general liability policy. And that's no longer true. To my knowledge, what I get from my friends in the insurance industry is if the AI messes up and you get sued, they're not going to protect you. They're not going to cover that. So talk to your carrier. and figure out if they need a special rider. You get riders, right, for sexual harassment and other things that aren't covered under your standard policy. If you're making significant use of AI in your business, I suggest that you get intimate with what your carrier thinks about that and make sure that you're getting the right coverage so that you get protected. Here's real important. As I say, yo aprendo español ahora, but also je parle français. Je parle un petit peu de français. And ChatGPT in French, en français, is chat GPT, which, if you speak French, means cat I farted. So perhaps the most important takeaway from this talk is that every time you hear the phrase ChatGPT, what you should be thinking in your mind is cat I farted. One final note, of course, that we all should be mindful of, which is that in about 5 minutes, there is a non-zero chance that AI will become an existential threat to human civilization. Have a nice day. And with that, that concludes my remarks, and I will release the screen share.
Fabulous, Brent. This was illuminating. Thank you. I have 1,000 questions. I also got 1,000 questions.
I'm just wondering, Anna, all of these images now that I've created, that I thought I was the Picasso of AI, and now I'm like, what the heck, Brent? You just
so the question comes up.
My whole art collection.
There you go.
The question comes up a lot, which is okay. So my cat walking across the canvas, I can't own that because the cat's not a human. But what if I pick up the cat and I plop the cat down? And my response is, okay, then the cat is a paintbrush, and you are the author because you're making the art with the cat's paws. And then, so what's the spectrum in between? Okay, so if you're on the AI and you're prompting it and you get a result, and then you say, no, make the blue yellow and twist the thing over here. And then at some point, I think your prompting can be a form of authorship, and the AI becomes a mere tool as opposed to the AI. Because, and let me make this clear, and I should have said this during the presentation. What we're dealing with right now with the AI is absolutely unprecedented in human history. Okay, we have a machine that can create original works of authorship. It can create new stuff that's never existed before. That's insane, and we need to figure out how to deal with that, because that's not ever happened before. So when you say you're creating art, Guillermo, you may be the author of some of that art, depending on how actively you are prompting it and correcting it and tuning it to your liking, as opposed to just say, give me a picture of Brent Britton drinking a glass of wine.
Yeah, no, it's very valid, and you made some interesting points here, and I'll kind of connect them back to the questions that some of the questions. One is, so are all the visuals coming out of AI tools basically illegal? And so that's one part of it. And then I want to add a little spin to that, meaning, you said about reading the terms of service. Like, how often, does the normal human being go in and actually click or actually read the terms of service? And I think that's where, Brent, we sometimes, those two things may be, it may not be illegal, but it may be, we may not be fully informed because we're not reading the terms of service and we're not going through that diligence, right?
You use an excellent turn of phrase there, which is diligence. And one of the things that I care about as counsel to the entrepreneur is that at some point you're going to sell that company, maybe to investors, but maybe to an acquirer. And there's going to be a lot of scrutiny being paid to the company and its assets and what it owns. And that's called due diligence, right? And so I'd like to put myself in the brain of the buyer's lawyer. Like, the person who's buying your company, their lawyer needs to know that you own all of the assets that you're selling to their client. And if all of your assets were created by AI, then you can't prove that you own them, right? So you're totally right, Guillermo, in that somebody somewhere at some point has to read the terms of service, and it doesn't need to be the business person. It can be their lawyer. But if you're out there and you're really making heavy use of the AI in your business, then you've got to understand what the legal ramifications of that are. And as to your first point, not everything is illegal, but by any stretch. And the police aren't going to come to your door and say, "Aha, you've been creating things with the AI." But it's important to recognize that you may not own what comes out of the AI, and it depends on how the AI was trained. Okay, if you've got an AI that was trained on your own data, on your own images, on your own audiovisual works, then it's not infringing anybody's copyright. Okay, because you owned all the input. So it's only the general purpose ones that you have to be careful of.
G, I want to reintroduce you because some people were not in yet before. And Guillermo Diaz is part of the board of the Latino Donor Collaborative. He is an incredibly experienced technology person, former CIO of Cisco and founder of Conectado, which is a group that which mission is to bring in all this knowledge to the community and to professionals, and that's why we partner for this report. So anyway, thank you, G, for joining us and for everything you do for the community and for the LDC and of course Conectado. And with that, Brent, one of the questions that I got through email was from somebody at a big corporation, and his question was, what are the most significant legal changes companies face when integrating AI into their operations? And he is obviously on the operations side, COO of a big company. What would you recommend there?
I suspect he said challenges, most significant challenges.
Challenges, yes.
Yeah. But I tried to cover the meaningful ones, which is that you've got to be careful if you're using a publicly available AI that was trained on other people's data. You're gonna have an overriding concern about copyright infringement. Everything that comes out of the AI could potentially be infringing everything that went in or something that went in. And again, you've got the ownership issue, which is everything that comes out of the AI. Is potentially not ownable by you or your company because it was produced by a non-human, and so just reconciling that is a significant challenge. And I think the watchword though really is to inject human creativity into everything that comes out of the AI. Okay, so tell your people, if you're using the AI to create the thing, then the thing needs to go through a bunch of different drafts and changes and inputs before it's legally viable. And then before you publish anything at all, whether it's your blog or your website or out to your shareholders or whatever, run it through a plagiarism checker, right? Run it through all of these filters, which can determine whether it still looks like something that came out of the AI or is still copying someone else. You've all probably heard of it. I didn't cite it, but the New York Times case. There's a case where the New York Times is suing because the AI output was they ran it through a plagiarism checker and it was 90% plagiarized from the New York Times. So it's easy to find this stuff, and it takes work to prevent it from happening. So
in that case, for example, when you're saying inject creativity that is human, in that case of the New York Times, if people would have used some of those premises, but then create an article that was originally and mostly product of the author that was publishing, that would have been okay. So it's okay to use it as a resource, but it's not okay to use it as the writer of something.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. Now, not everyone's going to care. Okay. I mean, if I reproduce an article from the New York Times and put it on my blog at brentbritton.com, I'm never going to hear from the New York Times because they're never even going to notice because they don't even know me and they're not going to care. But if you're meaningful and important and you're doing things that people are going to take note of, then yeah, exactly right, Anna. Inject human creativity and transform the output of the AI into something ownable, something that a person has actually authored.
Excellent. Gee, I have many questions, but I'll let you go on.
I was wondering on that particular point too, you made reference to, plagiarism, but also I think it's important if you are getting numbers and statistics, is to ensure that you just even the slightest percentages. I mean, you could ask it 3 times and get 3 different answers. And so I think it's really important, Brent, as you were saying, is to make sure that you understand the source and you humanize the study of that number, because that number could be 75%, it could be 82%. So which one is it? You need to make sure that your source is there, that you identify your source, and that you validate the data behind that
Absolutely.
source. So it's
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
just
You got to proofread
right?
anything, and ask yourself, would you rely on a worker in your company who gave you 3 different answers when asked the same question 3 different times? Right? Of course you wouldn't. You'd say, oh well, poor Jeffrey, he's not exactly up to speed yet. So somebody check his work, and that's what you have to do with the AI too. The AI is still a bumbling toddler. It's
Would
not.
you call it a hungry spy trained toddler?
Exactly. A hungry spy trained toddler going to ingest everything, and it's going to spy on you and reveal your trade secrets, and it's doesn't have a sense of its own decorum yet. So
Yeah. I know we have to finish, but there's a question that I got many questions, but one of them that really caught my attention was, have you faced challenges with AI law in terms of international different sources of AI, given that different laws are actionable in different countries, for example, for corporations that operate in all these different countries? Have you seen that as a potential problem already? I think it will be, but right now, is it a problem?
I recognize it as a potential problem. I personally have not seen terribly many examples of that sort of thing. I do have a moderately international practice in terms of some mergers and acquisitions that I do are cross border. But no, I haven't. But I must say, look, some countries. As I say, the copyright law that I discussed earlier in terms of ownership and infringement, that's generally pretty universal. Okay. But the idea of personhood and the idea of libel and slander, professional misconduct, making mistakes. I mean, these laws change throughout the world, and so yeah, I mean, there's any number of unpredictable outcomes depending on where you're doing business, where your customers are, and so it's again, I'm not touting my own horn or any other ones like me, but you really need competent legal counsel to examine the specific facts of every case and get a sense of what your risks are.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. G, go ahead. I'm sure as me, you got a bunch of questions.
I do. Well, it's I think, it's as Brent, you were talking, I was inspired, scared, like really thinking about all the work I've been doing. But I think you want to go back to this terms of the service, um, and you said something about not keeping my prompts confidential, but I think that's a double-edged sword sometimes, because even though, like, let's say, for example, I'll ask it, show me the image of a CEO, and you will probably 10 out of 10 times will not see an image that looks like me. And so the double-edged sword of that is, I want my prompts confidential, yet I want that data to be trained. So ultimately, and this is what I think we, Anna, want as well, is we want the training of that to say, oh, when that does come out, I want it to look like somebody like Guillermo Diaz, who is a CEO, or
Ana
Antonio
Valdez.
Pieri, who is the CEO of HP, because right now that doesn't, so it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. You're on mute, Brent.
Sorry, you raise a hugely critical and sensitive point. the bias inherent in the AI output emerges from the bias inherent in the AI input. And if you train your AI on biased data, you will get biased output. I heard a story where somebody was trying to get a photograph or get the AI to create an image, for example, of an engineer, and they got 49 images of men and 1 image of a woman, and they realized, wow, this is broken. And it's the same with Latino, it's the same with African American, it's the same with everything. The AI is going to produce what it thinks is the right result based on the data that it was trained on. So if there's bias in the world, there's going to be bias in the AI. And our job, I think, as well-meaning people who care about diversity and care about inclusion, is to fix the input, right? is to continue to make sure that the data that of the entire world is not biased, or at least that there's less bias tomorrow than there was today, and so that eventually the AI, will learn. But you're right, Guillermo. I mean, unless you tell it, make me a picture of or write me a bio for a fictional CEO and make sure that person is Latino. There's a really good chance that person won't be in the AI output, and that's tragic, because that means that presumably what is objective data going into the AI is also biased.
Absolutely. And, and I know that, again, time is of the essence here, and I wish this could last more, but I want your advice, Brent, because, how do you think give me 1 or 2 ideas on how to amplify the real facts and the real numbers of how Latinos are actually natural technological people. Not only the consumption, because obviously you've heard that we overconsume, we over-index in consumption. But for example, let me give you 2 numbers that very few people know. Mexico as a country has one of the highest per capita production of engineers in the world, higher than the United States per capita and China and India. Right. And sometimes during specific seasons, Silicon Valley's #1 source of engineers in the tech industry is Mexico, more than China, more than India. And that's because, there's like graduation season, et cetera, number of reasons. Last number about that. In 2010, 4% of all the students in the United States were Latinos. By 2021, 16% were Latinos.
Wow.
So how do we make aware, both recruiters in the tech and AI industry, but also Latinos, right? Latinos, the message is you are naturally a technological person. You have excelled for decades and for centuries, probably, in technology. The stereotypes that put you very far away from the typical techie are wrong. And for the recruiters, how do you make them aware that just in their same country, there is this source of engineers that they don't have to be killing for in other countries right? People that are American, whose first language is English. How do we do that? How do we close that gap?
I'm just a lawyer, ma'am.
She's like, yeah, I think.
I know.
It's like if I knew the answer to that question, I can tell you that. Look, my office mate in my laboratory at MIT was Latino, and I personally have had nothing but amazing and wonderful experience with people of all cultures, including Latino. And I dare say that if I knew the answer to the questions that you're posing, the world would be a much better place. But your organization is doing the heavy lifting here by analyzing these data and publishing these data and reminding the world that, as you said to me earlier, if the Latino population in the United States were its own country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. That's just amazing, right? That's not something that people think of. And I think getting that word out, what you people are doing at your organization, is exactly the way to humanize this situation and make sure that more people are aware.
I know it was, you know what? I know you can't solve the world, but I know that you will help us. And as Guillermo says, you're a friend of the community and you're a supporter and an ally.
You're
Yeah.
a family. You're
Absolutely.
Latino by marriage, so
That's right.
you're connected already.
Thank you. I'm happy.
Thank you.
I'm honored to be part of the family.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that,
thank
kids,
you, Brent, and
yeah.
thank Guillermo for your time and your participation. You know, our next edition of the AI webinar series will be focused on education, and the subject is empowering Latino students and educators, based on my last question, which is great. It'll be the last Tuesday of July. Please join and RSVP for it. We'll send you invitations in the next days, and encourage attendees to follow the LDC on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. We have information constantly to close that gap that I was talking to Brent about. And again, thank you everybody for being here. And thanks to these 2 amazing experts for being with us for this hour.
It was wonderful to meet you all. I'm sorry I couldn't actually see the audience, but I hope everybody enjoyed it. And it was my honor to be among you. Thank you so much.
Good job, man. Thanks.